that during that creating together, it was something that was for most attendees one of the most powerful experience during the whole convention, which was basically a lot of talks, a lot of interactions and workshops, but this was an interactive thing. And people really co-creating together, and there was so many breakthroughs. We have people really yeah, really having tears in their eyes when they drew this picture together. So it was really impactful for me, and also to see how Alex held the space. And this is the reason why we call this workshop Unleash Your Creativity, because I could really see Alex is a master at that. So Alex paints beautiful paintings in like the most surreal surroundings. I mean, I've seen his first YouTube video and I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's hiking up mountains, and he just like paints picture in -15 degrees. He was up on Mount Fuji, painted that thing, and it was just like, I feel it almost, it's like you paint pictures in like environments where it's really hard, for me at least, to be creative, and you really challenge those boundaries. And I also know that you share those insights that you have during those creations in leadership conferences and stuff like that. So yeah, Alex, maybe you want to talk like tell people out there a couple of things about you, and then we can dive into the topic.
Hey Kai, well look, it's really privileged to be here, and thanks for that great introduction. You know, creativity, what a great subject, and here we are. You know, the technology has let us down, and it's nobody's fault, but creativity is about how you adapt in the moment, and you did an awesome job just reconnecting us here. So it's going to be a more intimate group this evening, and that's just the way it is. Let me give you a short introduction to today. You know, today is my son Daniel's 6th month birthday. So he's 6 months old today, and he was 6 months old almost exactly 3 hours ago. And for those of you who have children, you'll know that that moment that a baby is born into this world, there is a rush of energy. It is one of the most extraordinary experiences you can ever have. And if you haven't had children, then you were there at your own birth. So you were there when that creative rush happened. That's what we're going to talk about today. How do you access that moment? Not just when you have a kid, because hey, you know, I have 2 children. I'm lucky enough to have 2 children, but I'm not going to have 10 children. And I don't want to just have, you know, 2 experiences of that extraordinary creative power. I want to have experiences every single day of that extraordinary creative power. So what I'm going to help and talk through a little bit is, how does that happen? How do you tap into that energy rush and unleash that creative power in any moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's for us, that's the most interesting thing, or for me at least. Like, how do I do that? I mean, I've seen you work. I was stunned at how fast you got in quote unquote the zone. You know what I mean? You were just really present with the people. And yeah, if you can share maybe some of your experiences, and also like give people a few tangible ideas and tips and tricks, and not tricks is the wrong word, but maybe like the way of how they can tap into that zone too.
Sure. Well, look, let me go back a little bit and tell you how I know what I know about this. Yeah. You know, I'm, as Kai just said, I'm a extreme artist, and I go and paint in extreme locations, and that's my laboratory. You know, I didn't start painting in extreme locations. I started painting in a studio like this, and I in fact started painting when I was a kid. You see, I know that every child is born creative. The challenge is remaining creative as he grows up, and it's not just me saying that. Pablo Picasso said something very similar, and Sir Ken Robinson, who delivered the most watched TED Talk ever, said schools kill creativity. And that's very true, and I should know about that. But it's not just schools, it's also businesses, it's also organizations, it's also our culture kills creativity. And I had a personal experience of that. That was all I wanted to be when I was 16. And I remember 2 things happened when I was 16 in very close succession: a breakthrough and a breakdown. The breakthrough, there I was in the art department, the sun streaming through the window, and I was painting a canvas a little bit like this one. It was a bridge, it had water running across it, and suddenly pink appears on the canvas. Now, I'd never used pink before. where did the paint come from? This ethereal mist suddenly appeared on the canvas, and then followed by that, this turquoise appeared on the canvas. I'm like, whoa, where's this coming from? And somebody came up to me and said, you know what, you could sell that painting for £200. Now, £200 when I painted that painting was an extraordinary amount of money for me back then. And I could see my dream was about to come true. My dream of becoming an artist, I was well on the way to that happening. And then just 2 weeks later, my dad came to me and he said, look, Alex, I've spoken to your art teacher and we've come to the conclusion you're never going to make money as a professional artist. So here my hopes are up here. And then they're dashed in that moment, because I knew that without the support of my dad, I wouldn't be able to support myself and go to art college. So one moment, hopes up here, the next moment, those hopes are dashed. And yes, I continued painting for a couple more weeks, but my art went from the bright Van Gogh-esque colors that I was painting at that stage to dark Rembrandt-esque colors. It went from the joy of my life to something that I was doing just to get a result. And when I was 18, I stopped painting, and I stopped painting for 14 years. And in that moment, it wasn't just my art that died, it was my creative expression of myself that died. And I spiraled down and down and down into a place that I can only describe as very, very dark. I had eating problems, I had drinking problems, I couldn't fall in love with anybody for 5 years. And I remember standing in Edinburgh where I was at university and looking up at the cliffs there and thinking, I wonder what it would be like to fly off those cliffs. Unfortunately, I didn't, because the cliffs were high enough. And what stopped me was this deep voice, quiet voice inside me saying, you are an artist, and one day you will paint again. And I remember the first moment that I started to listen to that voice, it was just after I walked to Machu Picchu, and an extraordinary guide said to me, you have a beautiful heart, you have an amazing soul, you need to listen to that, you need to express that. And it took me a long time, 25 years, from that moment where I was told I wouldn't be a professional artist to this moment. Now, 25 years is far too long. So what I've done over that period is picked up technique after technique after technique. I have climbed tooth and nail back up my mountain, if you like, to the point now where I can go into the zone that you talked about, Kai, a couple of minutes ago, very, very quickly. And what I want to share today is some of those techniques that enable anyone to get into their creative space and unleash their creative power just like that. Because you were born with that. It's not that you have lost it, it's just that you have suppressed it. And what I've also realized is that that creative power is unlimited. There is no limit to that creative power. So wherever I am on my journey, there is unlimited amount of creative power that I can still access. So what I'm going to share with you today is some of those techniques. And one of the techniques I wanted to talk about, first of all, is perhaps the biggest breakthrough I ever had. And this is really a question. And the question is this: who was responsible? Oh, and by the way, my daughter's just turned up. So we're going to have not just technical problems, but we're also going to have a living artist with us as well, my daughter. So let me ask this question: who was responsible for that moment when my dad said, I don't think you're going to make money as a professional artist? Was it my dad? Was it my art teacher? Was it the school? Was it society? Or was it me? Who was responsible? You see, I believe it was me. And in fact, what my dad said to me in that moment was the greatest thing he could ever say, or anyone could ever say to me, which is that I didn't have enough self-belief in that moment. So one of the things that will shift and unleash creativity, I know, is changing your beliefs.
I really and just really quickly, Alex, it really came to me as like your perspective on things is amazing, because a lot of people would say, well, my parents or my surroundings, something out there is responsible for me not being the fully expressed me, right? And I just wanted to like stress for people who are listening to this is like, no, they're not. They're not responsible. You are. You are always responsible for the creation of your life. So I really like that. Thank you. I just wanted to.
Yeah, you and I were just talking about this
Yeah.
in the warm-up before we got on air. And here's my view. Those people around you perfectly mirror you. And so all my dad did in that moment is he mirrored who I was, and he mirrored my lack of belief in myself. And he just reflected that back to me and said, you are not ready. Now, it took me 25 years to get from that moment to this moment. How can we speed that up? How can we get there faster?
Yeah. I mean, that is the real question that will be interesting for me is like, I mean, you have a lot of experience not only working on, or not working is maybe the wrong word, but unleashing your own creativity. Um, and you've also been doing it with others. Like, do you have like a couple of things? It's like, how do you work with people that really want to unleash it themselves? As you said, it's already in them, but how do they unleash it?
Well, let me start with an observation, and then let me lead into a question. So here's an observation, and you and I did that collaborative painting in Zurich, and we were talking about this earlier. When I walked into the center of that circle, there were 60 people, 70 people standing around, and there was a canvas in the center. And for those of you who weren't there, I walked into the center and I give an instruction and I told a little bit about my story. And when I walked into the center, the energy, the creative spirit literally rushed straight up through the earth, through my legs, up through my body, sent tingles straight up my spine, and it was so powerful that I almost burst into tears. Now, that is exactly how the creative spirit works. If you ever feel tingles in your spine, that's the creative spirit in action, what in certain belief systems they call Kundalini energy. If you've ever watched a boxer fighting, a boxer punches from the feet up, and the punch comes all the way up the body. That's what a real boxer does, right? He punches from the feet up. So what most of us are unaware of is that creativity is not an intellectual thing. So let me follow that up with a question, which is, when do your very best ideas come to you? When do your best ideas come to you? And let's open this up. So anyone feel free to jump in. When do your best ideas come to you? Kai, feel free to kick it off. When do your best ideas come to you?
I mean, for me, it's mostly when I'm not forcing ideas. So it's certainly not when I'm in my, like, when I'm really trying to figure a problem out. It's when I'm relaxed. It's when I'm centered. It's mostly in the shower, for example, or at the gym, in nature, when I'm active, when my body's working. Um, that's when I come up with great ideas. So nature at once, or like movement, and certainly like having my head free. And the second thing is, you talked about this moment in the circle. So together with other people, when I'm surrounded by people and I can feel we're share similar values, and I can also relax into that group, that's when also great ideas come out.
Cool. And look, feel free, anyone else, to jump in. When do your best ideas come to you? Either unmute your microphone, which you can do by just going up to the top of the screen and hovering over, and you'll see the mute button, and you can unmute with a microphone. Or if you go over to the left-hand side, you'll see that at the top there is a chat button, and feel free to add a comment in the chat. So I mean, they're great answers: in the shower, in nature. And I've asked this question of hundreds of people all over the world. And the question I always get is shower, nature, just before I go to sleep, just after I wake up, when I am traveling, when I go for a run, when I'm in the gym, when I'm writing, when I'm reading, when I'm cooking, when I'm driving. You know what? I've never had the answer when I'm at work. Nobody's ever said to me, my best ideas come to me when I'm sitting behind a desk at work, or even in a meeting. Nobody's ever said that. And what links all of those things together that I just mentioned? What is the similarity between all of those things? See, all of them are when we actually get out of our head, when we go out of our mind, when we tap into something greater than ourselves. And what I've observed is that true creativity comes, the doorway to it is your gut. Who does yoga here? Does anyone do yoga? Do we have any yoga practitioners? I do yoga.
Yeah, I mean, I just talked to a good friend of mine, Admir, and he said that what he loves about yoga is that he feels a lot of sensations going through his body, and that he feels at peace and really balanced. And I was like, that, yeah, that's really, like, you can literally provoke it, for like you can provoke creativity or at least relaxation through that body movement. It's extreme.
So I had my yoga teacher over here for dinner last night, and we were talking about it. And you know what? That for those of you who do yoga, in yoga they talk about the second chakra, and the second chakra is the source of creativity, and it's also the source of sexuality. And it is, if you're not familiar with chakras, it's just below your navel and a couple of centimeters inside. That is, according to Indian philosophy, a doorway into creativity. According to the Qigong and uh, according to Chinese philosophy, the Tao, it's called the lower dantian, and it's exactly the same space. And then if you fast forward over to Western philosophy and Western science, what you see is that scientists halfway between you and me, I'm just over the border near Annecy in France, and Europe. I know in Austria at the moment. Well, partway between the two of us, in Montreux, Nestle, and scientists there have discovered that around the stomach lining there are neurons, the same neurons that you have in the head. And what they're beginning to realize is that this is a second brain, if you like, the same number of neurons as in a cat or in a dog, and also, by the way, in your heart as well. And if you think about it, and you go back all the way down the evolutionary path to when we were single cell organisms, this brain was created before this brain. So this isn't the second brain, this is the first brain. This is the second brain. So I know that when I am out in an extreme location, you mentioned minus 15 degrees, or you mentioned, snowing. I painted in a blizzard the other day. I know that if I'm breathing into my gut, that will enable me to tap into that creativity. And it's not just me saying that. If you look at Steve Jobs said intuition, gut instinct, is more powerful than intellect. Richard Branson said exactly the same thing. He said gut instinct is more important in trawling through vast amounts of data than intellect is. Serena Williams, when she lost the semi-final last year in the US Open against a woman called Roberta Vinci, said of her opponent afterwards, the woman literally played out of her mind. Vincent van Gogh is famous for saying, I painted with my heart and my soul, and in the process I lost my mind. So true creativity comes when you get out of your head and you tap into something greater than yourself.
I mean, we already talked about yoga, about to enter that zone in a way. Um, can you share with us maybe some other ways of coming closer to that? I mean, that gut feeling, we all have it kind of, but for me, I have days where I'm just overcome by fear sometimes, and I'm just like in this very, I have to make this work, force it, stressed kind of mood. In like it was even worse when I had when I was working like a normal job, let's say for like a week. It felt like I was completely disconnected from that inner voice, from that intuition told me and that guided me through life, or that helped me to come up with those ideas. Like for me, I'm still like kind of often struggle to come into this zone. Is there something else you can share with us?
Sure. Well, let me ask you a question,
Yeah,
and then I'll give you a few suggestions. So, how are you feeling now? How are you feeling in this moment, Kai?
I feel pretty relaxed.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're feeling relaxed?
For me, it's that there are not so many thoughts running around in my head, or at least they're not so loud.
Okay. And who is it within you who is able to observe that?
Well, I believe something deeper.
Yeah. Can you see that to be able to observe something like the state of mind that you're in, there has to be an observer and an observed.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be, you can't observe something without being able to stand back from it.
Yeah.
So the secret of creativity is to observe. Now, when you observe something and you're standing in front of a canvas, and Claude Monet talked about this, he said, observation is the secret to great art. But take that as a concept and a construct and deconstruct it from the canvas. You see, you have a canvas of your life in front of you. So what are you going to paint on the canvas of your life? We know that if we want to write a report, or we want to write a document, or we want to deliver a workshop, or we want to deliver a webinar, we know that we need to turn off the distractions around us. So we need to turn off this. We need to put it on silent. We know that we need to turn off the ping in our email. We know that we need to find a space in which we can focus. But let me put it to you that it's not the noise outside you that is creating the distraction, and you implied this, it is the noise inside us that is creating the distraction. Yeah. So we have 5 senses, and those 5 senses connect us to the external world through visual. How powerful is that? You watch a film and it just burns into your memory a thought. You smell is incredibly powerful. What you hear, the tonality, how somebody says something, again, very, very powerful. And what you feel, you know, some of us are just kinesthetic and we feel something, we feel into something. Now, if you are getting more and more information coming through those 5 senses, and we get more information today than ever before, you know, 90% of the world's information created in the last 2 years, and it's going to increase 5 times over the next 10 years. No, 10 times over the next 5 years. Imagine that. That's going to overwhelm you. And it's not possible to listen to your 6th sense, and your 6th sense is the doorway to creativity. So the first insight is to extend the moments in which your greatest ideas come to you. So you mentioned, I go to the gym or I walk in nature. Now, could you create a routine where that became habitual, where that became part of everything you did, where you spent more time in the shower?
Absolutely.
Where you spent more time.
Just like one thing that I think why we're not doing it is because we're afraid. We're afraid that we won't be productive, right? That's the big fear that I often have, is like, yes, I would like to be creative, but I don't have time for it. How funny is that? Like it's a contradiction in itself. But that's what my mind tells me, is like, you really have to work now because you have to make money. And at the same time, what you're saying is true, is like for me the most valuable time is actually the time off, where I have those ideas. Yeah.
What's the value in a great idea? The value in a great idea is limitless. You can't put a value on an idea that comes to you in a second or in a moment. You can't put a value on that. It's enormous. You know, a real breakthrough is so where's the relationship to time in that? There's no relationship to time. You know, I live just across the border from Geneva, and Calvin did many great things, but one of the things he instilled into our brain is that there is a link between time and value, and that you have to work hard to create value. It's not true anymore. It used to be true when essentially the business model on which every single business was predicated was, it was about muscle, it was about strength, it was about physical abilities. That was true. Yeah, physical led to more value, but that's no longer true. Not in a world of concept, not in a world of ideas, not in a world of creativity, which is the world we live in today. So why do we spend all this time doing, when actually the most value will come from getting out of our head and accessing that observer state? So why not lie in bed longer in the morning? You spend more time, just an extra 5 minutes. You don't have kids, Kai, so you can do that. You know, when your child runs into your room, that makes it a little bit harder to do that. You can still do it though. You know, and if you meditate, spend more time meditating. If you do yoga, spend more time doing yoga. If you like going for a run or cycling or swimming or any of these things which activates your hips in particular, you know, that movement. That's why we were talking about this as well before the show. There is a link between creativity and sexuality. Spend more time making love.
That's a good one.
Spend more time making love. But do it tantrically, so that you're circling the energy in the body. Because it's as soon as you push the energy out of the body, either in the form of creating a child or however else you're doing it, that creativity, that creative energy is then lost. It will go into something else. So circle that energy inside the body. So the first technique is to extend the amount of time when your best ideas come to you, whatever that is. And for you, it will be different than for anyone else. Yeah, so that's the first technique. The second technique I wanted to share is to identify what is your mission on this planet. What is it that you are really, 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 really up to? Why do you do everything you do? You probably know that, right, Kai? You know what you're up to?
How do you mean, how I know what I'm up to?
Have you ever heard anyone refer to their life purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So do you know what your life purpose is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you know what that is.
And it changes, and I do. Yes.
So let me put it to you that everyone is born with a unique set of gifts, and creativity is how you express those gifts. So I'm gonna bust a myth here. The myth is that creative people are only artists or writers or actors or film directors. That's not true. Some of the greatest artists I've ever seen are programmers, they're working in IT, are accountants, not the people who are being overly creative with numbers, but actually are building a business through numbers, incredibly creative people. Lawyers who understand how to use the law in a way, not breaking the law, but how to be creative with the law. So those are some of the most creative people, because they understand the constraints and then they play to their strengths. So the second technique is focus on your strengths. Now, everyone is born with a unique set of strengths. Identify what those strengths are, and there are many, many different ways of doing that. You know, there are many programs. Gallup's got a program out there now called Strength Finder. There are many different organizations which help you to identify strengths. MBTI helps you to identify strengths. The thing with strengths, though, and will indicate where your creativity comes from. Strengths are linked to your personality. Remember we talked about the observer and the observed, or the unconscious and the conscious, or the soul and the ego, or the essence and the personality. This is what is your strengths, right? And they can change over time. Your strengths can change over time, but your essence doesn't change over time. Your essence is timeless. It is outside of time. And so one of the techniques I use to identify this is what I refer to as your life purpose. And Simon Sinek's done an enormous amount of brilliant work around identifying what he refers to as your why. And if you've seen that TED talk with the circles, he says very few people focus on the why. Very few organizations focus on the why in the center. He's correct. He's absolutely correct. Very few organizations do. And a lot of the work I do is around organizations. Same applies to our life. Eckhart Tolle has a program called Define Your Life Purpose. He launched his program a month after I launched my program around defining your life purpose. Your life purpose is a short statement which defines why you do what you do. Mine, for instance, is to unleash the world's creativity for good. To unleash the world's creativity for good. Everyone has creativity. If we unleashed humanity's creativity, wow, imagine what we'd do. We would tackle all of the biggest challenges we face. We'd tackle the global goals. We'd tackle climate change. Those things would be relatively easy. Look, if we can put a man on the moon and we can climb Everest and we can put a rover on Mars, surely we can tackle the problems that we've created. The creative spirit goes way beyond that.
I love it because like we're what I just realized that my purpose and yours is like we're just using different words, but it's so closely knit. So I love that. And just because like time-wise we're now in 45 minutes in, like you talked about unleashing your creativity. Feel free to end what you wanted to say, and also go into maybe like you have a workshop going on together with Arsim, who's also on this webinar. Can you talk a little bit more also about like how you turn that vision into action in terms of that workshop?
Sure. So look, I'm really excited to be doing this workshop. Asim approached me and said, look, would you be willing to run a workshop? And I said, I'd love to, because I love working with brilliant people and I love unleashing creativity. So one of the things we're going to explore on the first day of that workshop, which is on the 28th of May, is we're going to define, everyone who attends, we're going to help them define their life purpose. They're going to walk away from that day knowing what their life purpose is. And I know that when I discovered my life purpose, it was one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had. Everyone has a life purpose. You may say to me, well, I'm not the next Richard Branson or the next Steve Jobs or the next Nelson Mandela. And you know what? You're not. You're absolutely correct. You're not the next Richard Branson or Steve Jobs or Nelson Mandela, because you're unique and your life purpose is unique to you, and nobody else has your life purpose. It is specific to who you are. So what we'll do is we'll help you to identify your life purpose, and it's a statement, a few words, but it is incredible when you have that statement in your hand, because suddenly you go, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it helps you if you're looking for a job. It will help you to focus and find that job. If you are trying to set up a business, it will take your whole business idea to another level. If you are in a job and you're looking at a new project, or you're trying to find life in an existing project, it will help you take that project to another level. So wherever you are in your life, the life purpose will take your life to a whole other level. Before we get into the life purpose on the 28th of May, we're going to talk a little bit about, and we're going to unleash your creativity, and we're going to unleash your creative power so that you get to experience it. And if you weren't at the workshop in January, then you may get to experience what we did there. One of the things that Asim and I are playing with is the idea of doing another collaborative painting, because we know the power that unleashes when you do that. And you and I were just talking about that and what you can observe. And for those of you who are not familiar with what a collaborative painting looks like, you get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, 100 people in a room, and everyone paints one brushstroke at a time. And the insight is really, really simple. How you do anything is how you do everything. So when you paint that single brushstroke, you can observe whether you're coming from the observer or the observed, the essence or the personality. And what I will help you do is to help you observe that, to shine a mirror in front of your face so you can see, where am I coming from? And then we'll help you to tap into that creative power as you're doing that, so that you feel that energy shooting up through your legs, transformed in your gut, running up your spine, and then the ideas swinging down. And we'll also give you some other techniques that you can take away so that you can practice those techniques and you can, over time, increase your creative power. This is not something that happens overnight. What we can give is we can give you an experience in that moment that you get the experience, and then over time build on it.
I really
So
like
that's the
that.
28th of May.
I really like that, and I think what struck me when I really attended the first time a workshop, which was also based, it wasn't yours, but it was also an experiential workshop. I realized the difference between watching a YouTube video or a webinar or something like that and actually being there. Because what we talked a lot is about body sensations, experiencing it, etc. And that is, for me at least, it was only possible if I really went to a place where there were a lot of like-minded people connecting with each other and tapping in that space, and really were vulnerable and open enough to say, hey, I want to find out more. I feel that I sometimes feel like I lack this kind of creativity and do it. So I really like that. That's what we're creating with our events too. So that's what I
Totally.
wanted to do. Wanted to collaborate, have an interview with you. So you guys, if you are still there, you can see on the right side. I will also share the offer, because we couldn't share it with you through webinar jam. I will share it on the Facebook event. It's basically until tonight. We wanted to create something, so we have 10% off the early bird offer that you guys created, which is already very cheap. I feel. Um, so if you guys wanna join that amazing workshop, and I'm sure you're gonna talk a little bit more about like how to unleash that
Sure.
creativity, feel free to press that button. So yeah,
Cool.
that's what I
So
wanted
look,
to.
while people are popping on and doing that and checking out that offer, which by the way I think is incredible, I just wanted to share with you what's going to happen on the second day. So we've decided to split the days. 28th of May is the first day. It's a Saturday. It's going to be in Zurich. Come along. It's going to be a great bunch of people. Asim and I are going to be running that workshop together. Then on the second day, which is the day before my birthday, the 11th of June, we're going to get together again, and that day we're going to take what we learned on the first day and we're going to channel it into something physical. So here's one of the things about that creative spirit. That creative spirit wants to be channeled into something physical.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you get the energy rush. It's like, yes, it just wants, it desperately wants to come out into something. And why are we seeing all these great ideas, these great businesses, take the Inside Out movement. It was born out of that same space. The movement that you founded, Kai, was born out of that same creative rush. What the creative spirit wants is it wants to manifest in something physical. Now, how do we define that? How do we articulate that? Well, we need to do that in terms of what we refer to as business models. So we help you to take an idea that you have and define the business model around it. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with a business model, it's how you create value. And you may say, look, I don't want to build a business. And I say to you, that's fine. I'm not asking you to build a business. But you might have a project, or you might have an initiative, or you might have a hobby, or you might have something that you want to generate value at. All of those things are fine. So what we help you to do is take whatever it is, and it can be a business as well, and create the business model around that. And we do that from your essence. There are lots of tools out there. Alexander Osterwalder has a great tool called Business Model Generation. Brilliant. And if you follow Business Model Generation, it will take you about 8 weeks to do.
I
You
love
don't have 8 weeks.
I love that idea, man, because like a lot of those creativity workshops, the way I envision them, is like coming up with your life purpose and all that. But what I'm surprised now also to hear, what I love about it is that you also have the implementation phase in place, because I feel that's at least, if not even more important for most of the people who are already done some self-development. At least I speak from my experiences. Like, have all these great ideas, and they come up, and then they leave, and I don't do anything about them, even though I can feel already through the tools I learned that they come from essence, that they will be really awesome. But it's just like there's some fear holding me back, and I love that you will in a group together, so you have this support network as well afterwards to create that you
Sure.
also create a business plan together. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in fact, yeah, go on, ask him, go for it.
Yeah, I want just to jump into that one very quickly. That's what we were thinking about, and that's why we do also 2 weeks break in between, actually, to
Nice.
actually reflect on it instead of running everything, rushing through in a weekend, to have a little bit time that the idea and all the work which we do on the first day to really finding the life purpose, reflect on them, to recover, and then to be actually mentally ready for the second Saturday, where it's really about, as you said, Kai, implementation and execution. And one thing which is also very cool is, and I think Alex is also going to talk about it, beside the 100-day plan, that we will have a mastermind peer group. So everyone who is walking out on the second day is not by himself with a lot of ideas and the plan in place, and then he's going back in daily life, and there is the risk that you might forget about it, or you postpone and postpone and postpone, but you really have a peer group or accountability group where we are planning that those people meet every 3 weeks on a location and challenge each other and make accountable each other to make the not just the life purpose, but also the idea and the business model happen in the next 100 days, which are crucial.
I
Right,
really
Jim?
like
Yeah,
this, Arzim, because what let me just abstract that for people just in general. I love the ideas of connecting. So wherever you are out there and you think about like you have a great idea, it's so important to surround yourself with like-minded people. I cannot stress that enough. I've tried that for a very long time to do it alone, and it just doesn't work. It didn't work for me. I was not the type of person who could think of an idea inside my little room and then go out and manifest it alone out there. I needed a support group, not only a support group, but a co-creator group that supported me. So I think it's a very cool thing that you guys have that in place. And also in general, if you want to go out there and create something, really find people that are like-minded. Yeah, cool.
you're not alone, Kai. You know, you're not the only one who needs to do something together. Look at the difference between Albert Einstein and CERN. Okay, so Albert Einstein, 80 years ago, comes up with the special theory of relativity in Bern. He's taking a tram home, and the idea pops into his head. Okay, one person, and he gets a Nobel Prize for it. Breakthrough, the biggest breakthrough in physics. Fast forward 80 years, and the guys who find the big Higgs boson particle, there's 3,000 of them working on that project. Now, all of those 3,000 get the Nobel Peace Prize. What's happened in the 80-year period is that we've gone from a world where a single person could have enormous impact to needing to have thousands of people to have a single impact. You know, Steve Jobs, we all talk about Steve Jobs and go, Steve Jobs, he was incredible, he built this organization, fantastic, great. It wasn't just Steve Jobs. He had an organization of thousands of people around him to create that product. He may have unleashed that potential by based on unleashing people. You're not alone. And you're absolutely correct to say you need to surround yourself with people. So in the afternoon on that second day, as Tim just said, we'll look at a 100-day plan. The first 100 days in any business is absolutely critical, or on any project or any initiative that you choose to, that's critical. So we help you to define that, and we help you to give you really clear milestones to make that happen. And then we surround you with a group of people. What does that group of people do? It holds you in the space of the observer, so that you don't slip back into the observe, so you don't slip back into what you said there, Kai, which is you slip into ego. And you go, I can't do this. And the other thing that we're doing here, as you say, is we're combining on one side the conceptual part of it, which is your personal vision, with on the other side of it the realization of that. And I don't know a single program out there that marries the two together. Simon Sinek does this, and he does it brilliantly. So does Eckhart Tolle, does it brilliantly. Alexander Osterwalder does this brilliantly. One Page Business Plan does this brilliantly. But I've never seen a program that's linked all of these together into one program. And the reason for that is if you do all of that, it's a year-long program. And we're going to do it in 2 days. And that's the brilliance of what Asim has inspired me to put together. So I thank Asim for that inspiration.
You combine creation or...
We lost Kai.
Yeah, we've lost Kai. Kai, can you reboot, dude? And I wanted to hear your 2 words because those sounded pretty genius. So maybe you can just reboot, and hopefully we'll all stay on here.
I think what you wanted to say. Anna, here's back. Are you back?
Let me try it again.
I wanted to guess.
What I wanted to say, what I love about what you say, and I think that's the new movement actually of so many programs in the future, but not yet, but it's really just coming, is that you create this...
Oh no, we've lost him again. Do you know, it's amazing. He's just getting to the point where he's about to say something, and I know that it's really inspirational. And I'm like, ah! You know, it's like you get to the end of a J.K. Rowling chapter in Harry Potter, and he leaves you at the end with a cliffhanger, and you're like, ah! So look, we're running over a little bit here. I know Kai is going to come back. He's going to reboot. Look, he's back. The man's back. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to open up for questions as well, because I've talked a lot. I mean, we've been running for well, an hour since we were due to start, but probably 45 minutes since we actually genuinely started. So look, if you have questions, I'm very happy to stay on a little bit longer and answer any questions. Kai, I desperately want to hear what you want to say, man.
Yeah. Like, I also would be very appreciative of just like stuff that came up for you during that conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question, but also just a reflection. Björn, Caroline, Madalena, and Sophie, and the last name I can't see, Nancy. There we go. If you guys had some revelations or some stuff that come up, or maybe some stuff you guys want to add, feel free to share it with us. We still, if you guys are interested in the offer, we have it on the top right, so we're just gonna leave it at that. Let us know. Don't be shy.
Feel free also to add a question into the comments, into the group chat, and to access the group chat, just go hover your mouse over the left-hand side. You'll see a little border pop out there, and there's the blue button at the top, which looks like a chat button. Click on the chat button. You will see then the group chat appears on the right. You will see that I've added the link to the discount, which is running until tonight, 10% off the early bird price. I can't believe we're doing it for that price, frankly, Asim. We're giving it away. It is an incredible offer. You're getting all of his knowledge, all of my knowledge in 2 days for an incredible price, and also the mastermind group, the peer group running after that. So are there any questions? Are there any questions? Kai, Asim, feel free to ask questions as well. I might start asking you guys questions if you're not careful.
No, I also really think, not just as an organizer of these events, we wanted to make a price which is really a no-brainer in that terms. We for the people to really attract us a little bit more on the mass, not to say that the price is a hurdle. And that's why we went, on my point of view, pretty low. I think you get a lot out, including the mastermind group for 100 days out for the price. The other thing which I think Kai tried to mention before twice, so Kai, you can mention it too, is this combination of creativity and power, the execution part. Because there are so many workshops out there, so many things where you get yeah, there is a lot of teaching, and you get a lot of information in a lot of courses and workshop, but it's the execution part is missing. So what we were pointing out in a big way, that's also the second day, is really to make it happen, the power part. And we had a very interesting discussion with Alex about that he said, no, the second day it's not about power, because power leads to creativity and creativity leads to power. So you cannot separate the one or the other. I don't know if I frame it the right way, Alex, but it's very interesting. So both are actually tied together in a big way. So when you are doing something when you come into action, this can lead to creativity, and creativity can unleash then also your power. So it's really a circle, and I think that's for me made a lot of sense. So the one is not going without the other, and yeah, that's what I like about the concept.
Yeah, look, the creative spirit has immense power. When it rushes through your body, it has so much power that I remember I almost burst into tears when I stood in the center of that group of people who were just about to put a paintbrush on a canvas. That rush made me burst into tears. And I just had to pause and channel that energy back into the group. And I did an exercise only the other day with a group of leaders in a big multinational NGO, one of the world's leading humanitarian organizations. Exactly the same thing. I lined them up each other. They shared something. Leaders in this organization, and I got exactly the same rush. Now that's what we're going to help you to experience. That has immense power. It has immense power to change every cell in your body.
Yep.
And why do you cry? Because you're detoxing the body. That's exactly what's happening. Now, if you can channel that then, and as I say, the creative spirit wants to be channeled into something physical. The problem that most of us face is that we don't know how to channel that energy. We can access it in moments. We don't know how to access it in every moment. And then we don't know how to channel it into something which does something for good. And that really is, in a nutshell, what we're looking to do with you. So I'm very aware of time, and I'm very aware that people have dedicated over an hour of their time to be on this call, and I'm very grateful for that, and I want to respect that time. So if there are any questions, I'm very happy to answer those questions, and if not,
yeah,
I'm very happy to wrap up. Kai, over to you.
I'm super happy to wrap up too. Thank you very much, Alex, for taking the time. We had a great discussion before the webinar. Now we had a great discussion during the webinar. Also, Arsim for taking the time. Also, Björn, Caroline, Magdalena, Nancy, and Sophie, thank you very much for being here. And yeah, let's have, if you guys have no other question, let's close it up here, and maybe have another webinar. You're welcome, Caroline. Maybe have another webinar at some other point where the technical stuff also works, so people can access it. We can discuss after we go offline, if that's okay for you guys.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that. And look, my daughter is look, I tell you what, I know that it's time to go, because look, here's what's happened. My daughter's bought me the phone. Now, of course, you know, what do you do? What does any adult do when their daughter brings you the phone? You have to answer it. Now, there's nobody here, of course, but there she is. So my yeah. So I'm going to let her go. Oh, there you go. And I'm also going to share an image with you, because I just want to do this. So as you guys wrap up, let me just share this image, because I think you might quite like this. Okay, there we go. I'm going to leave you guys on this note.
Cool. Let's have a nice exit picture.
There you are. There is that's creativity in action, and you know, every child is born with creativity, and that means you were too. You were born with immense creativity, and you were born with a life purpose. You were born with incredible strengths, and creativity is how you express it. Thank you so much for joining us. And Kai, thank you so much for having me, on this webinar and hosting it. And Arsene, thanks for chipping in and sharing your thoughts. It's a genuine privilege.
Thank you, Alex and Kai, for organizing this webinar. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's disconnect. Let's stop this call here, and let's maybe over Skype have a quick decaf. That will be awesome. Okay. All right. See you, everybody. Bye bye. Have a beautiful.
Bye bye. Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.